Golden Black Live. Those of us left back in West Lafayette today, and that's Stacy and myself, and Kyle will join us in segment three. We're talking Purdue basketball. Obviously, the Boilermakers will be taking on who are they playing? Penn State. At 2:30 here at the United Center. We'll have Brian Newbert will be joining us momentarily from the United Center. He'll be covering the game for us as well. And the Boilermakers, I guess I don't know what Stacey, what we've learned so far. The biggest upset, obviously yesterday, Penn State beating Iowa, but first half of the Wisconsin Michigan game, Michigan was giving them a run for the money from the outset.
Yeah, I was able to watch a little. I feel like I'm really short today.
You are short. You want to go up or here? I'll go down.
But I feel like I'm really short.
All right.
Anyway, so I was watching a little bit of that, the Wisconsin game, and Wisconsin made a run there toward the end of the half. Frank Kaminsky is just so good.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's singled up in the post, he scores it pretty much every time, and when they double, he's just such a good passer that he's able to find open teammates. And Wisconsin has been able to make some perimeter shots that kind of helped them toward the end of the half there. But yeah, in terms of Purdue Penn State, I was at that game this year at Penn State. Right. I covered that game, and that was one of the ugliest games. And Purdue's had quite a few ugly games this year, but that was one of the uglier games this year until Kendall Stevens kind of saved them there at the end of regulation with that big three-pointer that he made, and then they kind of dominated in overtime. But it'll be interesting. A.J. Hammonds was really a man in
21
that game.
points down.
12 rebounds, 3 blocks. It was really, he had 7 turnovers, which kept that from being maybe one of the best games of his career, but he really dominated those interior players for Penn State. They just don't have the size to match up with him and Haas, and so that clearly is going to be an advantage for Purdue today that I would suspect that they really will take advantage of that, get the ball to Hammonds and let Haas play, and they're going to just be able to manhandle Penn State in the post. But then, can you defend? That's it. Can you defend?
37 points.
Yeah, a career high at that time, and Purdue had no answer for him, whether it was Davis or Octius. They both played him. Penn State used the high ball screen. He got to the rim. Even when they didn't use the high ball screen, he got to the rim. They just could not keep him out of the paint, and he really killed them. But, obviously Purdue was saved by a couple special performances on their end.
Yeah, an extremely important game, and the fact that the Boilermakers, if you look back, depending on how this season finishes out, that will be one of the more important victories. And yet, like you said, it was not a work of art. We have Brian Newbert from the United Center. Brian, you made it up safe?
Yes, I am still alive. I'm here.
That is a good thing. How was the Chicago traffic? Was it? Is it I know it's not everybody's arrived at the United Center just yet, but pretty good crowd up there.
Well, in my history of driving to Chicago, I was pretty much winless against Dan Ryan, but I snuck through today, so got here in a timely manner without any traffic issues. I haven't been out to the court yet, so I don't know what the crowd looks like, but the crowd's for Wisconsin and Michigan anyway. I would suspect Purdue would have a pretty solid showing of fans here today.
In the game that you haven't seen, Stacy's actually the only one of the three of us that has seen parts of it. Wisconsin leading by 5 at the half. Michigan got off to a good start, and then Wisconsin made a run. Brian, this game is how do you view this one? Obviously, Penn State pulled the upset yesterday. From a matchup perspective and maybe from a fatigue, I don't know if fatigue comes into play now for Penn State in Game 3 in 3 days. But how do you size this one up?
Well, I think in terms of Penn State playing its third game in about 48 hours, I would look at that like, well, they also have a head of steam right now. They have some momentum. They're feeling good about themselves. That could trump whatever wear and tear costs there are on their bodies. That happens sometimes where a team just gets hot, I think Iowa experienced that a little bit yesterday. I think this is the game Purdue didn't want because you lose this game, and obviously it really hurts your resume. Had you lost to Iowa, it doesn't hurt your resume quite as much. I do think today, I don't think a win over Penn State in a vacuum gets you in the NCAA tournament right now, but I think a win today does get Purdue in the NCAA tournament. When you look at how the rest of the bubble has fared in the last 48 hours, other than Indiana, it's been pretty much a train wreck. So I think if Purdue can get this win and then just set foot on the floor tomorrow against Wisconsin and get that very mild strength of schedule bump from just playing the Badgers again, I think Purdue would be in a really good spot. Now, obviously, it would be easier said than done. Purdue needed a minor miracle in State College to win that game. but I think Purdue's a very different team now than it was then, and I just like Purdue's chances today.
Yeah, Brian, that's what I was going to say. When the last time they played Penn State, it was in January. It was the game before the Illinois game, which a lot of the guys have said that Illinois game was kind of the turning point for the season. Do you expect, just in terms of the new Bill matchup, that Davis and Octius are going to maybe be able to rise more to that challenge now than they did earlier in the season?
Yeah, and I'll just kind of throw this out there too. DJ Newbill scored 2,000 points in his career, more than 2,000 points in his career, and the 37 points he scored on Purdue were a career high. So the likelihood of him matching that sort of performance is pretty unlikely. And, Purdue, I thought Rafael Davis didn't do an atrocious job guarding him at State College. I thought that he made a lot of tough shots on Davis, and more than anything, he scored on Purdue's collective defense as much as he scored on Davis. When you looked at how Purdue guarded the high ball screen, he split that screen quite a bit, and they really struggled when Isaac Haas was in the game. Purdue just has to do a much better job containing him up top, not yielding the lane to him, and just making him work for everything he gets. But I don't think he's scoring 37 again today.
Yeah, Iowa, I thought yesterday in the game, I didn't see the entire game, but certainly, again, was having a hard time. He was making shots and backing up and hitting threes and getting to the rim too. But he is certainly a guy that when he gets hot, he can definitely roll it in. But maybe Purdue a different team defensively. We did speak, Brian, with Jerry Palm this morning. He basically parroted a little bit of what you said. His feeling was that Purdue was in still, if they would lose today, he still feels like, because of what you said with the bubble situation, that the Boilermakers are probably in good shape. Whether they play themselves back into the play-in game if they would lose today, I suppose that's possible. But I know that Jerry Palm said, well, what's the ceiling for Purdue if the Boilermakers run the table, win the Big Ten tournament? He felt like a 7 seed would be the highest that Purdue would get. And he even hedged on that a little bit, maybe saying an 8 seed. But I know Joe Lunardi today, I think, had Purdue at 11, had Purdue in Columbus as an 11 seed against West Virginia, feeding into Notre Dame as the 3 seed. So that's I know that's the latest on that. But how much stock do you play in this? I mean, certainly this team has to just wants to get in the NCAA tournament and have some level of momentum going in, one would think.
Yeah, if you have to play in the play-in game, that's still a hell of a lot better than the alternative of not going to the NCAA tournament at all. You obviously would like to play your way out of the play-in game to give yourself a better chance to advance in the NCAA tournament. I think right now, I don't think they would be a play-in game team. I think if they lose today, that's still very much on the table. But I think right now the most important thing is Purdue just gets its foot in the door.
Yeah. You look at this, and then you have the opportunity to not necessarily right wrongs, but have a chance to get into play. Like I said, the strength of schedule thing is an interesting issue, and that if you just get the chance to play Wisconsin, if it ends up turning up that way, that will certainly not hurt Purdue. I mean, you had said yesterday in the office, we talked about the fact that Purdue played Grambling, a team that did not win a game this year. It cost them how many spots in the RPI? Did you figure, or did you hear?
8. I had Jerry kind of crunch it for us. He said it's the difference between Purdue being 58th in the RPI, which it was as of yesterday, and being number 50 in the RPI. Now, we have talked a lot about Purdue's kind of strength of schedule this year. A lot of that stuff being outside their control, in the sense that you only played the 3 other best teams in the league once this year. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
Maui, you lose to Kansas State, so you don't get Arizona in the first round. Obviously, Purdue had control over that. They could have beaten Kansas State, but that's not what happened. You end up getting Missouri. Missouri is horrific this year by major conference standards, by any standard. So a couple of things went against Purdue in terms of strength of scheduling, but when you see Purdue scheduled a team when you need games, when you craft your schedule for a team that's going to be really young, has no seniors, you schedule a Grambling, and you beat the tar out of them, and that hurts you to just play that game more than any other opponent would help you, if that makes any sense. That just does not seem right. I've been kind of talking the last couple of days about how the NCAA should exempt certain games from the RPI measurement to encourage teams to schedule the teams that need the most help financially, because these games are really important to the financial well-being of people like Grambling. And it's just unfortunate that the way the system works right now kind of makes them radioactive in the sense that people might not want to schedule teams like that and give them those opportunities to play those games because it might hurt their RPI and ultimately hurt their NCAA tournament resume. Now, Purdue, when they scheduled it, they could not possibly have been thinking of this sort of scenario, but people in the future certainly will.
Stacy, we've got time for one more question for Brian. Fire away.
Brian, before you came on, I was talking about just the way that Hammonds was able to really take advantage of that matchup in that first game against Penn State. With the way that he's been playing, really since then, do you anticipate Purdue really kind of being able to take advantage of that post matchup?
Yeah, that's something they're going to want to do against just about everybody. It's easier said than done, though. They have to be able to get him the ball, and everybody's going to craft their defenses around keeping the ball away from him. Now, when he does get the ball, we talked before about DJ Newbill's not going to get 37 again today. Well, A.J. Hammonds probably isn't going to turn the ball over 7 times today either. So there was another one of those statistical anomalies you probably shouldn't expect to happen again today. That would be a changing dynamic between the way the first game played out and the way this game might play out. But yeah, Purdue will have a decided advantage around the rim against anybody Penn State puts out there, whether it's Jordan Dickerson, who's 7'1", 250 pounds. At least he's got some size to him, or Donovan Jack, who's soft. But the one thing about Donovan Jack is he can step out and shoot some threes. So that could be a little bit of a troublesome defensive matchup if he is making shots.
All right, I guess I have time for one more question. We got a question in from the weekly A.J. Hammonds discussion and what might happen to him next year. Nothing simple in this equation, I don't suspect, but is it as simple as depending on how far things go and what happens in the next few weeks, or how do you think, and what do you see potentially as a time frame for all of this?
Well, he still has a lot of basketball left to play. Obviously, if Purdue goes to the NCAA tournament, he plays really well there. Purdue wins a couple of games. All of a sudden, people start talking more about A.J. Hammonds than they are right now. Otherwise, I think he's gotten his game pretty close to where I think he wants to be. My guess, and I want to underscore the term guess right now, is that he'll probably leave just because of his age and because he's probably about as close to that ceiling as he might get in college. I don't know that for a fact, but I think he will have a lot to consider. I think he really enjoys this team. I think there's going to be certain realities for him in terms of his draft stock, in the sense that guys his age don't get drafted very often. He's going to be 23 years old. He comes back another year, he's going to be 24 years old, and I can't remember the statistic, but there's only a handful of guys over the years who've even been drafted that old.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I would say is, well, if you're that old, a team that might be drafting you for immediate need more than they're drafting you for upside potential. So if you can come back and show you can play really well for an entire season, have the best season of your career, maybe that helps your stock. But it's going to be pretty difficult for him probably to get into that first round, even as well as he's played this year, no matter when he goes, simply because of his age. And that's unfortunate, but just kind of the way it works. But he has played his best basketball by far. He's been consistent. He's been energized. And those were some of the big questions around him and his NBA stock. So he has shown he can play at a very high level at the college level and sustain it. So I think he's really helped himself by coming back his junior year. I think he could probably help himself a little bit more by coming back his senior year, but I think I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think if I had to guess right now, I would say he's probably going to go pro. It's all also a matter of what he's willing to accept. I don't think he wants to go to Europe. I don't think he wants to go to the D-League. But there are no guarantees if he comes back either. So it's all a matter, I think, of what he's willing to accept at this point in time.
All right. Well, you better get out there because Wisconsin, Michigan tied at 44 with about 11 minutes to go in the second half. So it sounds like it's going to be an interesting finish potentially at the United Center. Thanks so much for joining us, Brian. We'll look forward to your coverage after today's game and maybe throughout the weekend. Who knows? As this weekend and this Big Ten tournament progresses.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Interesting, Stacy, that game's still at 44-45. I was just looking on, and I get accused, not accused. I always worry when I look at the odds sheets from Las Vegas that people think I gamble, which I never have. But it's interesting to see that the odds makers today only have Purdue as a 5.5-point favorite. Indiana only a 2-point underdog to Maryland. Michigan State in Ohio State. Michigan State actually just a 1 point favorite in that, but Wisconsin a 15. So would it be
Wisconsin was a 15.
Yeah. So some people are shaking on that one, but it's just amazing that these tournaments. That's one thing that's interesting about them. You assume certain things are going to happen, and I'm not saying Wisconsin's going to lose today, but this world already looks different for Purdue right now with the fact that the Boilermakers are playing Penn State.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I saw a highlight from yesterday of DJ Newbill holding his jersey up
Yeah.
like Penn State. We're not done. I'm like, you just won like a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not you got to win the whole thing for them to be able to obviously have a chance at the NCAA tournament. But that's what I think it just shows that these guys get really fired up because there's still hope.
Yeah.
Even for those teams that nobody thinks is going to win, there's still hope until they lose. And so it's an interesting dynamic to be able to have these tournaments with that automatic big bid sitting there, and no matter what conference you're in, if that bid is there, you still have hope until it's over.
Yeah, and Penn State, I think, can hold out hope potentially for an NIT possibility. That is a possibility for them as well. All right, we're going to take a couple-minute break and bring in Rick Mount. Will join us on Gold and Black Live here in a couple of minutes. I want to thank our sponsors, and that, of course, being Hilton Garden Inn when tomorrow's a big day, State HGI tonight. John Basham and the good folks at Basham Rentals. I wouldn't be surprised if John is not at the United Center today. Big Purdue basketball fan. Of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson at TrentIsMyAgent.com, and Triple X on the hill but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. We'll take a short break and be joined by Boilermaker legend Rick Mount, who will take us through segment 2, and then we'll come back with Kyle and Stacy and talk spring football and more in our final segment today in our early edition of Gold and Black Live.